First, I want to thank you for agreeing to sit and take an interview with me. And to start with, before you joined the Army, what did you do? Were you in school, or were you working, or what?
I was working in California, shipyard, just before I went in. But I'd been a farmer in Arkansas.
Now, were you drafted into the Army, or did you enlist?
I was drafted.
Okay. Where did you go through your training?
Camp Campbell, Kentucky, and Camp Barclay, Texas.
Okay, sir. Can you tell me a little bit about the training? Any experiences or the transition for being a civilian working in a shipyard to being a soldier?
Well, I went in at Camp Campbell, the maintenance company. When they interviewed me, drafted me and interviewed me, well, they was taking me in for maintenance company at the 44th Armored Regiment. And so he started asking me questions, and I don't know what I'd done. I told him it was mostly farm work. Well, did you drive a tractor? I said, yeah. He said, what did you do when it broke down? I said, we fixed them and went back to work. And he just said right quick, he said, maintenance company, 44th Armored Regiment. And that was what he was wanting, was someone that had some experience in maintenance. But I didn't really know what he was telling me, but he told me where I was going right there then, because that was what he was trying to get me in for maintenance company. Another guy come in behind me. He was a baker, and he said, I don't know why they sent me to maintenance company. I'm a baker. That's all they ever done. But we started. I got part of my basic training there, and then when I got through with some of the first basic training, after that I'd go to the shop, go down to the shop and stay out of trouble down there. And one day I'd go out on the wreckers. They had two big wreckers, 10-ton wreckers, and I'd go out on those wreckers every chance I got, and I watched this buck sergeant drive the thing, and I never drove it, and one day the little sergeant come and wanted me to go out with him and get a truck, and he worked himself down getting out there with that old big wrecker. He couldn't no more drive it than by airplane. But we got out there and picked up the truck we went after. And it was worse when he started back. Finally I said, Sarge, you want me to drive it? Try it? He said, yeah, I believe so. And boy, he jumped out of that seat and come around, and I got in it. I didn't tell him I never drove a big truck. But I started off, but I'd watched this sergeant drive it, a good friend of mine, and I took off with it, and I had it out in fifth gear going down the road, and but I come all the way in. I never raked a gear, scraped a gear, nothing. And we drove into the shop, and Skelton, you're a good wrecker driver. And next day, someone come to me and give me a chauffeur's license that he had signed for me. But he had went and told the motor sergeant how good I could drive that thing. And next thing I knew, I was the regimental record driver and had that about 10 miles as far as I'd ever drove a big truck. But anyway, I was on call 24 hours a day, but they never called me out while I was in Camp Campbell. But when I went on maneuvers, I paid for it. Boy, they worked me 20 hours a day on maneuvers. But they, they come and stripped about a half of the recruits out of our company. I don't know how much of the division they stripped, but the only time that they ever told us what was going to do and where we was going. But then a week later they come back and got about all the rest of the recruits out of the company and moved us down to the other end of the camp, and they told us, said, you're going to get about 4 to 6 weeks of fast training and go to North Africa replacement for the 1st Army. And I was scared then, but I had sense enough to know that I didn't know nothing, and I knew I didn't know how to protect myself. But that was one time I was scared. But we stayed down there a week, and one day they told us pack our stuff up, and there'd be a truck there to pick us up. And when the truck showed up, well, it was a maintenance company, and the old general had got us back. And so we went back to maintenance company and trained for 2 years before we went overseas.
Now, so your trip overseas, tell me a little bit about it.
Well, I went to the 44th Tank Battalion, and they sent me to Fort Knox to school. And while I was up there, they shipped out for the South Pacific, and I went back to the 43rd Tank Battalion, service company, the 43rd Tank Battalion. And them old boys had been together for 2 years, and you don't make friends very easy with a company that you come into, and they've been together for a long time. So I didn't have many friends, but I got one thing. I got on the top of the list when it comes to details. I was the first one they'd pick every time they needed detail of any kind. And back in August of 43, I guess it was, I got on a detail, and we boxed up empty ammunition cans to ship overseas. And I tell those boys, this ammunition comes in them cans over there. In the States, it'd come in a wooden carton, and we had to transfer it over to the cans to hang on the machine guns. But I told the boys, I said, this stuff comes in them cans over there. I don't know how I knew, but I guess I'd seen it in the newsreel. But I'd see an empty ammunition can, and they'd throw it, they'd toss it. We got over there, and they were laying all over the ground. Everywhere you can go, you could see ammunition cans laying there. But we boxed them things up and shipped them to France. But I made friends with this lieutenant. He had that detail of boxing them things up. And I brought it up to him. I said, this ammunition come to those cans over there. Oh, no, said it don't. Said, we got to have them over there. And I found out he was GI. He was all GI. He was strict. And everybody just hated him. And if he said anything, told somebody how to do something, they done it that way. And I told him, I told the boys, I said, the easier way to do this, we were making big old boxes, 2 or 3 foot wide and 2 or 3 foot high and 8 feet long. And we'd stack it full of cans and nail the lid on it. We'd nail the board, nail it up tight. And they went to France. But we worked for 2 weeks at that. They was very near a boxcar load of them. There was a lot of them. But they got shipped to France, and the 14th Armored Division got them. They bombed Le Havre for the night before we got there, bombed the harbor, and we couldn't land, so they shipped us over, sent us on over to England, and we stayed there 6 weeks and drew new equipment before we went into combat.
Now, once you got into combat, what was your job or position? What were you doing?
Well, the first month I was on a tank recovery unit, and it was a tank that didn't have a gun. It had a winch on it and a boom instead of a gun. But it would pick up. You could throw a cable around the turret of that tank and take the winch and pick up one side of it off the ground if it had a track thrown on it. But it'd handle them old tanks. And I'd been a wrecker man in the States, and boy, it was a big job. We couldn't lift the side of one of them with a 10-ton wrecker. They was too heavy to lift. But this old recovery unit, it'd lift the track off the ground. But I stayed with that until the first day of 45. I transferred out. I took a bus to get off that old recovery unit. We had the master sergeant that when he got drunk enough, he'd come up to see how we was doing on the front lines. He stayed back to the company all the time, but he'd get drunk. He'd come up there and start giving orders. I told the boys that, I said, that guy trade your life for a woman and a bottle of whiskey. And they said, oh, I don't believe you would. And I said, I sure think you would. But one of the boys come to me when the war was over. He said, Skelton, said, you was right about Markovich. But he agreed with me by then. But he was the worst piece of humanity that I ever seen. But I took a bus to get away from him. So I went into transportation, and I'm working for this lieutenant that had shipped all the cans to France. And we, after Herlisheim, and we pulled into a French army camp, an old French army camp that deserted. And we to rest up and draw replacements for all the men we'd lost in Herlisheim. And when we loaded up, got loaded up and ready to go, was now then we're the mystery division, and they're going to be attached to Patton to fight old Patton to the Rhine River. And
now, everyone I've talked to, pardon me, has a pretty strong opinion one way or the other about working under General Patton. What was your impression?
well, the man was insane. That's the best way I could. He loved war. He liked publicity, and that is all they thought about was publicizing himself. But when we got him across the Rhine River, the first thing he done was he went to the 4th Armored Division, which was his pet division, and had them to pick fast-moving equipment and 300 men, and sent them 60 miles behind lines, which we would have liberated this camp in 2 weeks' time. But he sent these boys 60 miles behind the line to get his son-in-law, who was in this camp. When they got there, the son-in-law wouldn't even go with them, because he said, "You're all going to get killed." The German army had surrounded them by the time they got there, and there was one man out of the 300 that come back to the 4th Armored Division. There's a tech sergeant that got back. Now he got all those men killed or captured trying to go get his son-in-law, when we'd have liberated him in 2 weeks' time without firing a shot. But Roosevelt died at the same time that this took place, and Eisenhower didn't find out about it, or Eisenhower made a private out of him.
So
that's the reason I was told people he wasn't just crazy, he was insane.
now, pressing on talking about liberating the prison camp, were you there for the liberation of any of the camps the 12th liberated, the POW camps or the concentration camps?
I'd be one of the. I told my grandkids the other day, a while back, I said, any picture that you see of us at a camp like that, I said, I'd already been there and gone. I was already gone to the next one when that picture had been taken, because I was way ahead of the photographers. I'd following, I think it was Combat Command B. C Company was one of the medium tank company that I was right behind them with a load of ammunition. And we had gasoline ammunition. We kept right up behind them all the time. And when we took the bridge across the Danube River, I have a whole library of war books, and I went through all these books, and the 12th Armored would never be mentioned. We didn't have a photographer, newsman, reporter with us, so we didn't get credit for anything. But I kept looking, and we took a bridge across the Danube, and crossed the Danube River, and the 12th Armored was the first military outfit that had ever crossed the Danube River. The Germans could always stop anybody at the Danube because it was swift. They couldn't cross it. But we was the first military outfit that ever got across the river. But we took this bridge about 11 o'clock. We drove all night to get to it. We drove all night one night, and they blew a bridge 15 minutes ahead of us. So I think the second night, well, they found out that there was still one on down the river. And we drove all night again. We got to the bridge about 11 o'clock in the morning. And they already had the fuse lit. They run some prisoners on and made them cut the fuse. And we saved the bridge. But we sat there for about an hour, and the columns started moving again, so we started moving with them. Had a load of ammunition, and a load of gasoline right in front of them, and we got across the bridge. I'm still sitting on the bridge, and we run into a traffic jam, and nobody could move a foot. We just up bumper to bumper, and here come a plane to blow the thing. And he was off target. He had to stay above in the clouds till they figured he got about to the bridge, and he'd dive out and where he could see the bridge and try to bomb it. But he was off about a half a mile the first time, and they was already set up for him. And they just lit up the sky with tracers and bullets going at that plane. And he got back up in the clouds again and got away. He went on, about 5 minutes he come back. And I'm sitting, I'd already got up and run into this traffic jam. I'm sitting on the end of the bridge, and the bridge is his target. And somehow I knew that I didn't have time to. I'd always jump out of the truck and into the ditch when we got in trouble. But somehow I knew I didn't have time to get out, and I fell over in the floor of the truck. But he missed the bridge. If he had hit the bridge, the only way they'd probably known I was dead was call the roll of the company, because I don't believe there'd been anything left of me. I was sitting on a load of ammunition. There was 1,000-pound bombs on the right side of the truck, another 1,000-pound, 2 500-pound bombs on the other side, the left side, on both sides. I was sitting right in between these bombs they'd dug out of the bridge that they had planted in there to blow it. But I fell over in the floor and didn't think that I had such a close call. C Company had a tank. I think was about the second vehicle in front of me. A load of gasoline was the first vehicle. But I talked to the boys that was on the tank, and he told me he got shrapnel, and said that one of his buddies got shrapnel, but said he didn't live. He died from the shrapnel. But that plane and the bomb hit the ground together. He didn't get the bomb turned loose. When he dived out of the clouds again, he was off target about, I figured, 40 yards 40, 50 yards where the plane and the bomb hit the ground at the same time. And my gas mask was hanging in the door of the truck. And when I turned my gas mask in at the end of the war, which is about 2 or 3 weeks later, the old boy pulled it out of the case. He said, "This thing's no good. It had a shrapnel hole through that gas mask you stick your fist through." And that shrapnel had come in that door and went out this door here. There wasn't no shrapnel in the truck. And the kid that was driving the truck, he landed in the ditch over there, and he come back, told me, said, "I looked around and I was laying in between a pair of legs." But he didn't know. He never did know how close we come to getting cut in two with shrapnel. But the shrapnel had to go over my back, just right close to my back, and went in one door and out the other. Yeah. But I didn't know it until the war was over, about 2 or 3 weeks after that.
Yeah. Now, speaking of that, where were you when you got the word the war was over? Do you remember?
Rosenheim, Germany. Yeah. It was a scary time because, boy, they had snipers everywhere, and it just you didn't dare to get off by yourself. If you even 2 men together, well, was pretty well safe, because these snipers, they'd pick one man. If he was by himself, well, they'd kill him, and they wouldn't get killed. You see, they were smart. But it was spooky to know the war was over, and they was prisoners lined up, coming, trying to get to us away from the Russians. Be prisoners lined up in the road just as far as you look like ant trails, and just as far as you can see it, coming, trying to get back to us to surrender, to keep having to surrender to the Russians.
Now, after the war was over, how long before you came back to America?
I caught the boat the 7th day of December. Got home, got Newport News, Virginia, about 10 o'clock. They pulled us up to the dock about 10 o'clock Christmas morning. We ate Christmas dinner at Fort Patrick Henry. Went out on deck, and we was standing there holding our duffel bags, and heard something thump, thump, thump. I looked, and a rock went tumbling down across the deck of the ship. And I'd had a fight over the rock in Marseille. We was in camp and had 2 boys, one Tulsa and the other was Detroit. And they was all the time pulling pranks on me. And so I come in one day and my mess kit was gone. And if you didn't make the chow hall, before they closed that chow line down, you didn't eat anything till the next meal, because you couldn't spend a nickel in that place. But I come in and my mess kit was gone, and I opened my duffel bag up and looking for it. And, well, I come in that night rather and found this rock in my duffel bag, and this one boy from Detroit, he said, "Why don't we quit playing them pranks?" And I said, "That's fine with me." And he always wanted to shake on it, and he had to shake hands. So, but what he didn't know when he was wanting to quit, I'd already got even with him I figured he had hid my mess kit, because I didn't think anybody else would. But somebody finally come along and give him, just reached me in the mess kit and said, "Go eat." So I met him in the line. That was when he wanted to quit playing pranks. But while I was hunting for my mess kit, he had a big old padlock about that long on his duffel bag, and I cut a splinter off the post, and I drove through that padlock. It's locked on his duffel bag. But he hadn't found that yet. And so when he found it, I don't know how he got it in his duffel bag. But I was intending for him to have to carry it to maintenance place and get a hacksaw and cut it off. But anyway, that night I come in, and after dark, they'd turn the lights out at 10 o'clock. And I reached in my duffel bag, and here's a rock in there, about that big around. And I took it out and I slipped it in bed with him. He couldn't, you couldn't wake him up with a thunder, and when he wanted to sleep. And I think, I'll just freeze you with this rock. His old rock is just like a chunk of ice. I slipped it in bed with him, and he's laying in bed waiting for me with his shoes on. And he threw the cover back and come out there wanting to fight. And so I think the only thing I could think about was I was going home black and blue, because he wasn't going to whip me. He was stouter than I was, and I knew that because I'd scuffle with him much to know. But I think, "Oh boy, you're not tough enough to take what I'm going to give you." And that's the only thing I could think about, was going home black and blue. And so we first got down and scuffled, and he said, "Why don't you get up and fight like a man?" I said, "Boy, that's fine with me." And we got up, and I'd heard an old man down home said, get in a fight with a man, said, hit him in the nose, said he'll get so mad he can't fight. But I'd raised up with a pair of boxing gloves, but the lights was out, it was dark in there, and I just took a jab at his nose. I guess he must have lunged at me or something. But I hit him right in the nose with my left fist, and he just knocked him down on his bunk, and he grabbed his nose with both hands. That's all there was to the fight. But then when we got to Newport News, Virginia, here this rock went tumbling down across. Somebody carried it home. I don't know who it was. But it went tumbling down across the deck of the ship. And but I never paid any attention to it. And years later, 20 years later, we went to Nebraska bird hunt. I had a friend up there that lived on the Ralph Minnick. He lived right on the Nebraska and Kansas line, and he run custom combines. And so I think, well, boy, he'll know a lot of farmers we could hunt on. So we'd go up there. We went up there to see him, and we walked in. I introduced him to my boys, and the other boys was with us. There's 6 or 7 of us that hunt together. But Ralph said, directly, he said, "You done it." He just kept saying, "You done it. You done it." And I said, "I done what?" I said, "I don't know what I done." He said, "You put that rock in my duffel bag." He'd carried that rock to Fort Riley, Kansas. He said, "I wish I'd have brought it home with me." But that was about the end of the rock anyway. But it'd come all the way home with us. And I never did know. I finally, well, I did. I think I found out. Some old boy that didn't have no idea who I was or nothing, come up on the other end of this tent. They had big old tents about 100 feet long, and they had a lot of men in it. But some old boy on the other end of that, from the 36th Infantry Division, had put the rock in my duffel bag that we had to fight over, and it come home with us all the way. I didn't bring it home, but somebody else. I don't know who had it on when I got it was on the ship. But I just seen the rock and I recognized it.
Well, I want to thank you for sitting down and telling me your story. Is there anything else you'd like to add, or anything else you feel you left out and want to talk about?
Well, I'd like to say this. We was the lucky people. We was the lucky ones. The veterans that we left over there was the heroes.